Okay, so in this unit, we're going to build some programs with some graphical user interfaces, and we're going to be using tkinter, which is a toolkit that is actually built into Python. And yeah, so we'll be using that interface or that framework to use like Windows components and text boxes, labels, buttons. Rather simple. We're not going to get too involved here. This is a, I've been working with this a little bit as I'm developing this course, and this is not a friendly framework to deal with. First of all, you'll notice I'm not in online GDB. This isn't going to work in online GDB. I'm in IDLE, which is the little interface, the development tool that comes with Python when you install Python. So you're going to have to work offline for this. I'll also mention those of you using other tools, for example, PyCharm or Spider. I did run my code in Spider, and it did not have the effect that I wanted. Like some of my styling and colors just didn't work. So this is very finicky. It's not a friendly framework to work with. So we'll just start with the basics in this little program that I have here, and then we'll do a more involved program in later videos. But yeah, you'll find that these techniques require a lot of code for not a lot of payoff. Yeah, so just prepare for a little bit of frustration, I think. You'll be wanting to do certain things and unable to figure out a way to do that. At least that's been my experience. As far as like pictures and things like that, I feel like it's just not worth it. It was a struggle just to get a little bit of color into my application. And so yeah, it is what it is. So anyway, here I am in IDLE, and let me just run the demo program. So we have a window with a button, and I'm going to click the surprise button, and it changes the color of the window as well as the button. I was able to get the button color to change in this program. Not so lucky in our next program, but yeah, so let's take a look at some of the code that goes into creating even just a simple little application like this. So what I have here is first and foremost an import statement. You can just go by what I do in my examples. In our next example, we'll have more import statements, but this is just kind of like a catch-all import statement to bring the tkinter framework into our program. So you know what, I'm going to hold off on this. This is just a function. We've done functions by now. It's just a function that's going to run when the button is clicked. So I'll talk about that last. I think I'd like to just talk about building a window and getting some controls like a button, label, text box, whatever, into the window. And we'll have some new terminology, obviously, surrounding these techniques. So we would call this the root window. And typically, and in your book, they call the window root. You can call it what you want, okay? It's like naming a baby. You choose. But I just went with root because that's what your book does. So this statement alone to the TK constructor will give you a window, which is nice. So the window is pretty easy. You can set the title of the window, the title property. So here I set it to welcome to GUI programming with tkinter. And then you can set the geometry property to manipulate the size of your window. So I went with a 400 by 400 pixel window. Sorry, I'm just realizing that this font could be bigger here. Hang on here. Okay, so I made the font here a little bigger. So setting the geometry of the window to 400 by 400 pixels in this case. Again, you choose. But okay, so now what I'm going to do is create some controls. I have but we all see the surprise button. There's actually a hidden control here, which is a label. You know what, let me take that out. I'm going to take out my label and show you why I created like kind of a filler label, we would say. I'm going to take out these statements and show you what I had to do to get this looking the way I wanted it to look. Okay, so this is what my window is going to look like without the filler label that I created. And I mean, the behavior is the same, but here's the thing, and this is the point about Python and, you know, trying to place controls onto your window, they're really like kind of anchored to the window, and in this case it's anchored to the top. I do have a little bit of control over that. I could anchor it to the right, the left, the bottom, but even so, I'd like it centered, okay? That doesn't look so great if your button is stuck to the side of the window. So what I've done, so let's just look at the button, creating the button. I've called my button BTN Surprise. Again, you choose the name. I like something descriptive. I like to use prefixes, so it makes the code more like self-documenting. So I called my button BTN Surprise, and here's the creation statement, putting in a call to this button constructor. And I'm telling Python that this button belongs to the root window. Okay, and I'm setting the text to surprise, which is what we see there. And then I'm also saying the command is going to be click BTN surprise, which is my function. That's the function that's going to execute when that button is clicked. So that's pretty straightforward. So so once that button is created, that'll create the button, but it's not going to add it to the window. To add it to the window, we have to pack the button into the window, like packing, you know, a pair of jeans into a suitcase. Okay, we use the pack method in this case. So I'm saying BTN surprise pack. Okay, now it's going to be packed into the root window because I specified that this button belongs to the root window. So packing is like just that final act of actually putting it in there, putting it in the window in this case. So again, I have for the side, I have the top. Now I could just as easily change this to bottom, and the button will be at the bottom, which doesn't look much better. Okay, so we'll get to that. This padding, iPad Y, iPad 5, this is related to like kind of the space around the button. Watch me remove these. These are optional. I'm going to remove those and run. So take a close look at that button. Look at kind of the spacing or the padding around the word surprise. Now I'm going to run this again with no padding at all. Okay, and you can see everything, the button is kind of auto-sized. There's a lot less pad, there's almost no padding around the words in the button or the text in the button. So the padding, especially iPad Y, and iPad X refers to the vertical and horizontal padding around the text in that button. So that's the button. And so if I want this to, you know what, let me go back to the top here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a label just to, I'm just fudging it. You know, when there's a will, there's a way, and I want my button centered. So I'm going to add a label. We're not going to see it. It's going to be invisible. I'm going to add like a big, tall label over this button. I'm going to pack it onto the window above the button, and that's going to push the button down. So that's what I've done here, basically. So I call my label filler because its only purpose is to fill that space above the button. It belongs to the root window. The text is nothing. You know what? Let me just put a little bit of text in there just so we can see. And then when I pack that, I have 75 pixels for the padding here. I'll put it down to 0 just so we can see the effect. Okay, so there's my label with no padding, no vertical padding or Y padding. And then when I put 75 pixels in there, then you can see that we're going to get an enormous amount of vertical padding such that the label is very tall and it's going to push that button down. So there you have it. So I can take that text out of there as well. So, all right, let's look at the button click now, okay, which changes the colors. This is the function I've defined up at the top of the program here. So we can use the configure method on each of these controls, the window, the button, and also the label, to change the color. In this case, I've chosen cyan. So really just saying, you know, what's going to happen when this button is clicked? I'm going to configure the root window and set the background color, BG means background color, to cyan. Okay, same thing for the button. I'm going to configure it and set the background to cyan. I tried to set the foreground color to red. You can see it is red. It doesn't look all that great though. And then we also have the filler button. I have to set that background to cyan. I'm going to comment that out and show you what happens if I don't set the background color of the label. Okay, you can see it stays gray. So I have to set really the background color for everything, all of my controls there if I want them all to follow suit. So, you know, I did try to use an emoji. Let me show you what happened here. Let me get rid of this button text here. I tried to change the button text to, this is the yellow smiley face emoji. I'm going to run that. Okay. And first of all, there's a bit of a delay when I run the code. It's like it takes a while to process the emoji, and the emoji itself is rather lackluster, so you're not going to get color emojis in your tkinter programs. So it's really not worth it, to be honest. So we'll just, keep it simple, not a lot of eye candy, and just, getting the basics down.